In previous videos, we had talked about components and how we can have referenced objects. And we had talked about connecting inputs and outputs. Now, in this demo, I wanted to go over a simple definition and talk about how we can interact with reference objects and create, in this case, we're going to be creating a line with circles on that line. And you can see how you can work dynamically using both Grasshopper and Rhino together. So the first thing I want to talk about is wires. So every time you connect a component to another component, you will have inputs and outputs, and they are connected using wires. So let's say I want to disconnect the wire that is connected to this panel. I can use a right click, and under here you can see the wire display, and you can see disconnect, and here it will say input. There is only one, it is length. So here we disconnected this component, which gives us the length of a line, and there is no line because there is no referenced object. But so this is how you would disconnect a wire from an object. Now there is a better way to do that. In this case, you can connect by clicking on the end of this component, clicking on the panel, and if I wanted to disconnect, I could just hold the control button. So on your keyboard, you can hold control, and then the arrow, you can see there's an arrow that appears. It is red and it says minus. So now if I click to connect a wire, instead of connecting it, it will disconnect it. Now if I hold Shift, this allows me to connect a component and connect it multiple times. So what that means is if I have this panel and I want to connect the output from this component, if I connect it, you can see it only connects one of the wires. So if I wanted multiple wires to be connected into this panel, I would have to hold Shift, click on the end of a component, and connect that to the panel. So now I have two inputs, and the inputs, what do they say? They say null, meaning nothing. There is nothing coming out of these components. And that's because we don't have an object yet. So let's create a reference point. We will do that by creating a point in Rhino, and then we can either select it now, or we can click on the component, in this case the point component, and we can set one point. If you select it first, it will automatically assign the selected point to that component. If you do not, it gives you the option to select it inside Rhino. So in this case, we have a point, and we have a line between the referenced point and this defined point. So if we want to modify this point, we can use these coordinates. If we want to move the reference point, we can select it in Rhino. Let me zoom in, and I can move it here, and when I let go, you can see the definition updates. Now, one thing you will see here is we created 2 points, and the 2 points are connected to a line. This line is being measured. So you can see the measurement here. The measurement is 20. So by the way, when you connect multiple inputs, so let's say we're going to connect this one, if you wanted to disconnect one of them, you could hold Control and just disconnect them. But if you have multiple things connected, you can also do a right click and you can go under Disconnect. And when you have multiple things connected, you can disconnect all of them all at once. So this is when you would go into the menu. To disconnect something, you would click on the component and disconnect everything all at once by clicking on disconnect, disconnect all. But if it's a single wire that you would like to disconnect, you can use the control key on the keyboard. So that's how we connect and disconnect wires. Now another thing I wanted to cover in this video is that in some instances you will have many wires, and sometimes the wire cross and can be a little bit confusing. So there's a few ways to bypass this type of issue. One of them would be you can reorganize the component. If I put this component down here, this one up there, well, you can kind of position things in a way where the wires don't, um, it's easier to read when the wires don't cross. So that's one way to do it. Now, another way to organize things a little better would be to use the wire type. So in this case, I have a default wire, but you can also click on the component and you can choose the type of wires that you want. So here you have an option for the wire display, and you can choose the default, or you can use faint or hidden. Now, if I use hidden, what will happen is if I deselect everything, I have these little lines. There's 3 lines. It looks like a Wi-Fi icon, and it doesn't show you where it is connected to. So in some cases it could be nice because here you have this this wire that goes over some of the other components, and so if it's disconnected, it's nice to know what the length is, and maybe you want it at the beginning so you can see what the length is as you make a modification to that point. Now in many cases you would not want that. If you have wires that cross, it is usually recommended to go under wire display and use faint. This way you can still see the wire, but it doesn't bother you as much when it overlaps many of the components. So these are some of the best practices. Now there is another component we haven't talked about, which is related to managing the wires, and this one is called merge. So if I double click and write merge, I will get this component, and this component basically doesn't do anything other than help you be organized. And what I mean by that is if I connect this number and I connect the one which is essentially the same number but divided by 4, you will get 20 and 5.0. Now if I merge it, I can say the first number I would like is actually the 5.05, which is this number, and the second number I want is the full length. And now if I copy, I will use Ctrl C, Ctrl V, I copy the same panel, I connect this component, the merge component, to the panel, I can see that the order is reversed. So what this does, it helps you stay organized and define exactly which one goes first in the list. Now in this case we don't really need that, but as you go further and create more complicated definitions, this will come in handy. So it's another way to stay organized. Okay, so we have a definition. The definition takes a line, it measures the line, and if we divide it by 4, we can identify the desired radii for this situation where we have the circles touching at one point. So the middle one touches on one side, and then on the other side touches the next one. Now, let's say we want to automate this definition so that we can have more than 3 circles. So in this case, the way the definition works is we take the line and we use this component here called the divide curve, and we ask this to create additional points. And so the points are generated from dividing the line into 2 segments. So that's what this means here, divided by 2 segments. Now if I wanted to see where it divides the component, I can select it, and I can either do a right click to preview, or I can select the line, use the middle mouse button, and I can display the preview or disable the preview. So when you do that, you will have the option to increase the number or decrease the number. So in this case, as you can see, we have an input of 2, and if we divide it by 4, we get the correct radius. So you can see there is a relationship between the number of segments and the division. So we are basically multiplying 2 by 2 to get 4. So instead, we could automate this using multiply. So if I use this character here, I can access multiplication, or you could type in multiplication to access the same command. So let's use this one, and we will connect the number 2. We connect number 2. And instead of saying 4, we will use a panel with number 2. So now if we look at the output, we'll see that the output is the same as the input that we had. So we're able to remove this input and get the desired number automatically by using a multiplication. And so now that we have created this automation, all we have to do is increase this number here. And as we increase it, it will increase the number of circles on the line. And as I have shown before, if we edit the position of the referenced object, everything will continue to update. So I hope that this gives you a better sense of how to use these components to create a definition. And I hope that this will help you become more familiar with the Grasshopper interface.